Okay, drama, this is my third video lecture today, and I already hate this. But it's okay. We'll get through this. I'll get through this. You'll get through this. Probably. Okay, so what I'm going to talk to you today about is the history and the main characteristics of drama as a genre. Since this is dramatic literature and we're looking at nothing but drama, and while, yes, you've read plays before, you've been exposed to drama in the literary sense uh, before in other English classes, usually it's only here and there. So I want to go over the history of the literature, the literary form, and the art form, and also touch on main characteristics that separate this from the other genres of literature. So, of the three genres of literature, drama is arguably the oldest. I don't know if it's the oldest, poetry might be older, but it's old. The earliest records we have of drama come from ancient Greece in festivals to the god of wine and celebration, Dionysus. Basically, plays would be written and performed during these religious festivals as a form of religious worship for the ancient Greeks. During these festivals, there were two types, two subgenres of plays that were written and performed: comedies and tragedies. And their names, while they do give them away, they did mean something a bit different to the ancient Greeks than they do in a modern context. So when we're saying comedy, that does not mean it's funny. It just means that it has a happy ending, usually a wedding. When we're saying tragedy, it has a sad ending. And Greek tragedy has a lengthy influence on drama and storytelling throughout the ages, which we are not really going to get into because I don't know if you ever read a Greek tragedy before. Probably not, but they're weird. And the main reason they're weird is because of this thing: choral presentations. So Greek plays were originally written for what is called a chorus. For those of you who are in choir or who have sung in groups before, you know what a chorus refers to. It's basically a group of people in that context singing. In this context, it's even weirder because the Greek chorus did not sing. They spoke and basically chanted in unison. And yes, it is as weird as it sounds. But originally, all of these dramas were written for the chorus, just a group of people that would basically chant and sing the story. And then, as legend goes, Thespis steps forward from the chorus, delivers the first solo line of dialogue, and becomes the first actor, hence why actors are also sometimes referred to as thespians. The Greeks believed drama, particularly tragedy, had an important function to ensure society remained orderly and harmonious. So these plays, these festivals, were actually considered something of a civic virtue, or not necessarily a civic virtue, but more of like a social service. And that is because the Greeks believed they provided catharsis. Basically, the notion of catharsis works along the lines of the belief that people have over the course of their life, they build up in these pent-up negative emotions, things like anger, depression, fear, anxiety. Not that we know anything about that right now in 2020. But it's the notion that people build these things up over time, and that if these emotions are left pent up too long, they're going to result in the person snapping and acting on these negative emotions. And the Greeks did not want to live in a society where people would act on their rage or their anxiety or their fear. They wanted a more orderly society. So they believed that plays that tragedies specifically could provide a catharsis or a healthy release of these pent-up emotions. Basically, by watching people living and experiencing these feelings on stage, it allows the audience to live vicariously through them, and because of that, release this pent-up emotion in a healthier way, and thus society would be saved, and sunshine and lollipops would follow. I don't know. Something like that. Greek drama heavily influenced the Romans, who basically took the comedy and tragedy notion and made it their own and wrote their own stuff, also corresponding to the notions and the genres of comedies and tragedies. On the right over here, this is a bust of the most famous Greek playwright, Sophocles, notable for writing the Oedipus trilogy, focusing on the saga of Oedipus, a man who is prophesied at birth to murder his father and marry his mother. And in the process of him attempting to avoid murdering his father and marrying his mother, he winds up murdering his father and marrying his mother. It's all very interesting. Catharsis. So, dramatic decline. So, drama remains strong throughout ancient Greece and throughout the Roman Empire. But when the Roman Empire fell, drama also fell into a steep and sharp decline for a number of reasons. Firstly, if you remember from geography, after the Roman Empire falls, Europe plunges into the Dark Ages, where people are more focused on not starving to death and not getting murdered by the packs of roving barbarians. So in an environment like that, putting on a play kind of becomes less important. So for one, drama took less importance as people came to prioritize survival over art. Two, the Catholic Church, as the church rose to prominence, the Catholic Church, because of the Greek and Roman roots of drama, and specifically the pagan Greek and Roman roots of drama, the church viewed drama as sinful or unchristian, and because of that, it was mostly banned. It survived, ironically, because of the church, where the church would basically have religious plays, most notably the Easter Passions, basically to tell the story of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. But for the most part, there really wasn't a whole lot of drama going on during the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. For the reasons of people prioritizing survival over art, and because of the strong opposition and influence from the Catholic Church. But drama does come back during the Elizabethan period and the Renaissance. As Europe became more secular and basically entered a figurative period of rebirth during the Renaissance, drama also becomes more secular and becomes more widely embraced during the Renaissance. And this is the period of Shakespeare. My man, Billy Shakes. Elizabeth I, pictured right, was a notable patron of the arts and an especially fervent supporter of theater. She was a benefactor to a number of English playwrights, notably Shakespeare, who, over the course of his life, writes, I believe, 37 different plays that we know that have survived. He may have written more and we just lost them, but we have 37 surviving Shakespearean plays, and the Elizabethan period becomes something of a golden age for drama and theater. And again, Shakespeare is kind of a big deal when it comes to drama. I'm going to briefly touch on Shakespeare because if you have looked at the syllabus, you'll see we are not reading any Shakespeare. I debated throwing a Shakespearean one on the syllabus, and then I remember how long those plays are and how long it takes to go through them because of the Elizabethan English and the iambic pentameter. It's beautiful language, but it is not the easiest to understand quickly. But it is important to understand the influence of Shakespearean plays on drama, the art form, because Shakespeare did have a heavy influence on the development of drama. So, Elizabethan drama, Shakespeare, wrote 3 types of plays: tragedies, comedies, and histories. Now, comedies in this sense start to take on our more modern connotation of comedy, where they don't just have happy endings, but they also tend to be funny. And a number of Shakespearean comedies still hold up today if you can understand the language. I've seen a couple. I've been in one, and they're fun. Tragedies are the Shakespearean plays that you're most likely familiar with. Things like Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar, Hamlet, the Scottish play, Macbeth. And then your histories are essentially fictionalized biographies of actual people. Shakespeare wrote a lot of histories over the English monarchy and various English monarchs, ranging from figures like Richard II to Henry IV to Richard III, which I think is his best history, to Henry V. There are a lot of Henrys, but that's beside the point. The main characters in plays written during the Renaissance tended to be of higher stature. So plays during this time were not attempting to tell the stories of average people. Plays were trying to be grand and epic and tell the stories of grand, epic figures. People like royalty or nobility or mythological figures. Again, he's got a play about the assassination of Julius Caesar with some very well-known historical figures, at least during the Renaissance. Shakespearean drama is also known for being less stylized of an acting style and a writing style than Greek and Roman drama. The Greek chorus was gone. Now, the acting style was still big and kind of bombastic, and the writing was still focused on being pretty and interesting as opposed to being realistic. But with the Renaissance, there is a gradual shift towards drama being a bit more realistic. But it's not quite there yet because it's still focusing on the elite. It's not telling the stories of average people, and it's not trying to portray these people as real human beings. They're portrayed as larger than life, almost mythological figures. What's also important to understand, though, is that at this time, drama was viewed more as entertainment. It wasn't really viewed as an art form. This was entertainment, and this was entertainment that was for everybody. Everybody across the social spectrum, rich or poor, noble or common, would watch and appreciate drama. And this is one of the reasons why Shakespeare actually became so popular, because his plays appealed across the various social classes. The elite members of society, the nobles, the rich people, the educated people, they latched onto the pretty language and the characters and the storytelling, while the lower classes, the groundlings as they were called, because they would buy the cheapest spots. They're not even seats. Basically, they would pay to stand in what's essentially a giant pit in front of the stage and just stand for a Shakespearean play, which again, these things are long, but they'd stand there and watch this play. And granted, that wasn't really the point. They weren't going to appreciate the play. They were going to see some stuff go on, see some people in costumes say some stuff on stage, hang out with their friends, and drink. The Groundlings were a notoriously raucous crowd. It was not unusual for them to heckle the performers, and perhaps unsurprisingly, given that, they tended to latch onto the violence or the body humor that was included in Shakespearean comedy, and that was included in Shakespearean and Elizabethan plays. Now, into the modern era, which is where our class is really going to start. Modern drama continues that drive toward realism that started with Shakespeare, or really that you started to see during the Renaissance when plays and drama started to come back after the Dark Ages. Modern drama is consumed with trying to portray realistic characters grappling with real issues, real complex issues of both society and human nature. And these plays could be outright controversial, if I can talk. This trend really became pronounced with Henrik Ibsen, who has some of the most interesting facial hair I've ever seen. It's like, if you can see it, he's got like two right triangles just jutting out of his face. Anyway, I digress. But it really began with Henrik Ibsen's play, became more pronounced with Henrik Ibsen's very controversial play, A Doll's House, which is the first play we're going to read. A play that was so controversial when it was originally released, it caused riots because of its social commentary and its take on society. Although, as if you compare it to more recent plays examining society, it's pretty tame by comparison. This modern era, this modern period, really gets kicked into high gear with a Russian named Konstantin Stanislavski and what is termed within the acting community as the method. So Konstantin Stanislavski was a Russian actor and director in the late 1800s who pioneered what has become known as method acting. And both his performances and the plays that he directed heavily influenced this growing trend toward realism in drama. Stanislavski really marks the major shift to plays trying to not necessarily tell a grand epic story, but wanting to depict life. They wanted to depict real people dealing with real issues that don't necessarily have neat, clear resolutions. And this is where the method acting school comes in, which for the duration of the plays that we read in this course, method acting and this drive toward realism, while incorporating social commentary into realistic drama, this dominates all four of them. Well, three of the plays we're going to read. Importance of Being Earnest is it's satirical. It's great. Maybe you'll like it. I love it. But the gist behind method acting is you're trying to replace simulated emotion, which kind of dominated the more traditional school of acting that you would see in older Shakespearean plays. And instead of simulating emotion, it's more focused on experiencing emotion It's not simulated emotion, it's real emotion. And the belief was that actors had to manage to experience and depict real emotion to make their performances more authentic, to depict a real person. And this is kind of where drama starts to view itself less as entertainment and more as art and more as literary expression, as opposed to here's a cheap little play to entertain people and keep them happy so they don't notice how crappy the Elizabethan period is. Method acting dominated the American theater scene and eventually spread throughout the world in the early 20th century through a number of important figures, notably Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler, two notorious acting teachers who taught method acting. Strasberg especially emphasizing it has to be real emotion, and it's only real if you're forcing yourself into these emotional states by reliving past trauma and experiencing that on stage to adequately portray this character. If that sounds really psychologically damaging, it is. It's not healthy to do. And a lot of method actors today don't follow the Strasberg method. They take a bit more of a hybrid approach. But the other name on here that you might recognize him or not. If you take film, you're going to know Marlon Brando, who played Vito Corleone in The Godfather, who was one of the biggest movie stars of all time, was a self-proclaimed student of the method. He specifically studied under Stella Adler. Okay, so that's history of drama, at least up until the point in the course where we're going to pick up. So, on the characteristics of drama. Most importantly with drama conveys meaning almost entirely through the words and actions of its characters. So, as a reader, you have to pay a lot of attention to what the words and the actions of a character show about the character. And a lot of this does take the form of reading between the lines. And it's as much about what this person is not saying than what they are saying. So to do this, you really have to have a thorough understanding of these characters to analyze drama and understand it, especially if all you're doing is reading it and not either performing it or seeing it performed, which what we're doing, we're just going to read it. So it really is all about how well you understand the characters. If you don't understand the characters in a play, you're going to have a tough time getting the point the author or the playwright is trying to make. Just some main character types you'll see. You'll have flat characters, which are undeveloped characters. More what we refer to as two-dimensional characters. They're defined by only a couple character traits. They're not super complex. They're more or less used as plot devices. And you can contrast flat characters with what we call round characters, which are fully developed characters that have a number of different traits and personality to them. You also will have dynamic characters, which are characters that change over the course of a story, contrasted with static characters, which are characters that don't change, they remain static. And drama especially likes to use what we refer to as stock characters, or basically stereotypical characters that fit into categories. A lot of stock characters have their roots in what is referred to as the commedia dell'arte type of theater that came out during the Renaissance in Italy. So examples of stock characters would be like the sarcastic, wisecracking servant. That was the most famous or well-known stock character that came out of Commedia dell'arte, and it became a favorite even during the Elizabethan era. Or, as we'll see in The Importance of Being Earnest, the servants have personality, and the servants tend to be sarcastic. Reading drama can be kind of difficult, though, because it is meant to be seen and performed. When you're reading a script, the script is not the final product of a drama. The final product of a drama is the performance. So there's a lot of inference a reader has to bring to a script in order to truly get something out of it. And scripts will vary in what they'll give you to help flesh that out. All scripts will give you the dialogue, the things the characters are saying to each other. But sometimes they'll tell you like what the set and scenery is. Sometimes there will be stage directions to describe either how they're supposed to deliver a line or what action they're supposed to do while they're doing something. Other times, you're not really going to get any of this. And you have to bring that to your mind. You have to picture that in your own mind while you're reading it to have it make sense. Number of terms that are used when referring to drama, what we would call dramatic language. Terms you might see pop up in stage directions in a script, or they could be something where this is just what we call them when we're talking about a drama. So examples would be a monologue, which is a lengthy speech given by a single character, a soliloquy, which is when a character speaks their thoughts and the other characters don't hear it, or more often than not, other characters aren't present. This is pretty common in older dramas. As I've mentioned, once you start to move into the era of Stanislavski and method acting, you don't really see nearly as many soliloquies, because soliloquies where people are alone and they just speak their thoughts, they're viewed as being unrealistic. And if a play is trying to portray life, they don't really want to necessarily portray somebody just speaking their thoughts to the audience. It does a number of things that kind of shatters the realism. For one, again, it's a character doing something unrealistic. And two, the character is breaking the fourth wall, as we call it, by speaking directly to the audience to basically explain what they're thinking and what they're doing. Older plays, notably Renaissance plays, did not really care about this, and they'd have characters speak their thoughts to the audience a lot. Shakespeare, a lot of famous Shakespearean lines come in the form of soliloquies. A shorter form of a soliloquy is an aside, which is just a single line that a character will speak to the audience, where in this instance the other characters on stage with them don't hear it. Usually asides are comedic, where basically the character will just say a quick, generally one-liner, usually kind of sarcastic or quippy, to comment on something somebody else just said or did without anybody else realizing it. And it's just a way to, again, let the audience in what the character's thinking. Kind of going along with this notion of characters explaining things to the audience that the other characters don't know, which is dramatic irony, where the audience knows something that the characters on stage don't. Used to create tension and conflict and engagement and get you to care about stuff. Because we, as an example, we know Juliet's not really dead, but Romeo doesn't. Then we get more into the stage direction side, things that will periodically show up in stage directions. So I'm just going to go over these quick just to kind of explain stuff. So cross, which just refers to a character moving or walking across the stage. Blocking, these are specifically the directions given to the actors regarding their characters' movements. These can come both from the script and from the director. And the number of blocking given will vary from script to script and from director to director. Some scripts, like Arthur Miller or Tennessee Williams are very specific and nitpicky with their blocking. Other scripts and other authors like Shakespeare don't really give a whole lot of blocking. And just like that, some directors will be very specific with their blocking. Other directors will hardly give any blocking and just basically have actors make it up or do what feels natural to them. That one is generally harder to make. That style of directing is generally harder to make work unless you're working with some experienced actors who know what they're doing. Okay. The set is the specific physically present scenery in a play. Now, this is different from a setting because a number of plays, particularly modern, like really modern plays, will have very minimalistic sets where there's hardly any furniture on stage. So understanding the specific physical set that's there is important to understand what these characters are doing and also what the director is trying to get across. If it's a very minimalistic, if not non-existent set, you have to think, why did the director or the playwright write this play without a set or with a very minimal set? What point is this trying to get across? And lastly, a prop. It's an object that's used, handled, or carried by a character in a play. That's it. Pretty simple. And lastly, when we're talking about plays, and this comes up with other literature as well, but it's just worth talking about the difference between subject and theme. So when we're talking about subject, not just in drama, but in literature, that's what the piece is about. What is the story about, or what's the subject matter? Well, the theme is the overall message, or what this story is saying about the subject. A really good example to illustrate the dichotomy between subject and theme is Arthur Miller's play, The Crucible, where the subject of the play is about the Salem witch trials, while the theme is really more about a broader context of political persecution, and it's really meant to have a more contemporary take on what was going on in the U.S. during the 1950s with the McCarthy hearings and the Red Scare and the fears of communism. Kind of going along with subject and theme, these are different types of drama that can tend to not necessarily distort, but play around with this. You have farces, which are over-the-top comedies, which are really focused on physical comedy and just absurdity and craziness. Examples of farces would be things like Noises Off or Lend Me a Tenor, where lots of people running all over the place, slamming doors, opening doors, running into people, falling over, stuff like that. The other one is a melodrama, which is an over-the-top drama, which its defining trait is exaggeration in pretty much everything. If you want an example of melodrama, think of soap operas. Okay. So that's the gist of this. I know that's pretty long, but we got through it all. If you have any questions about this, about history of drama or what we went over in here, send me an email, stop by my office hours. This PowerPoint is on Canvas as well if you need to refer to it. I know it'll help out with the dramatic terms assignment you've got. And with that, I will talk to you later.